In the heart of Rome, where power was displayed through grand spectacles and crowds gathered to witness the empire in all its glory, an emperor made an unexpected decision. Commodus, a leader who was supposed to guide the nation with wisdom, chose the arena as a stage for glory, trying to recreate the victories that once made Rome the world's greatest power. But why would an emperor, with all the resources and power at his disposal, turn to the brutality of the arena to assert his greatness? Instead of just ruling, Commodus wanted to be seen as a hero, a true warrior embodying the strength and courage of the ancient Romans. His fights weren't mere displays of power. They were attempts to revitalize the image of an empire he feared was losing its luster. In this video, we'll explore how Commodus's battles in the arena were more than just entertainment. They were part of his strategy to try to revive Rome's past glories, even at the cost of his own image as emperor. If you think you know the story of Commodus, get ready to discover a surprising side of his quest for power and recognition. Commodus, the gladiator emperor. Commodus, son of the renowned Emperor Marcus Aurelius, has always been an enigmatic and controversial figure in Roman history. Unlike his father, who was known for his stoic philosophy and prudent leadership, Commodus sought something more visceral, the adulation of the masses through acts that blended power and spectacle. From an early age, he showed an unusual fascination with the arena, a place where brutality and glory went hand in hand. While previous emperors used the arenas to entertain the people and consolidate power, Commodus did something unprecedented. He became a gladiator himself. His decision to fight in the arena was, in many ways, a break from imperial traditions. Instead of being the distant emperor surrounded by luxury and security, Commodus wanted to be seen as a hero, a true warrior who risked his life like any other gladiator. For many, this was an act of unmatched bravery. For others, a sign of extreme imbalance and selfishness. However, for Commodus, these fights were more than just a spectacle. They were a declaration of power and an attempt to immortalize his name in Roman history. Commodus's presence in the arena sparked both fascination and discomfort. He wasn't just an emperor who sponsored gladiatorial games. He was a gladiator in his own right, fighting and winning in front of thousands of spectators. These victories, however, were often surrounded by controversy. Although Commodus was skilled, many believed that his victories were rigged, with his opponents being instructed to lose. This further fueled the divide between those who saw Commodus as a hero and those who considered him a megalomaniac tyrant. Beyond his pursuit of personal glory, Commodus saw the arenas as an opportunity to rewrite Rome's narrative. Rather than being remembered as a weak or inept ruler, he wanted to be revered as an almost mythological figure, someone who brought Rome back to its days of glory through strength and courage. His battles were not merely about physical victory, but about symbolic victory. Commodus wanted to be the emperor who embodied the indomitable spirit of Rome. However, this quest for gladiatorial glory came at a cost. Commodus began to distance himself from governmental responsibilities, preferring the thrill of the arenas to the tedious work of ruling an empire. This created a power vacuum, where senators and other leaders began to question his competence and sanity. To them, Commodus was more concerned with entertaining the masses than ensuring Rome's stability, leading to growing dissatisfaction that eventually culminated in conspiracies and betrayals. Commodus's decision to become a gladiator marked the beginning of a transformation not only in his own image, but in the overall perception of his reign. Through the arenas, he sought not just entertainment but a way to revitalize his image and that of Rome. However, in doing so, Commodus jeopardized the very structure of the empire he so desired to exalt. From this point on, Commodus's story becomes a constant struggle between the glory he sought in the arena and the grim reality of his rule. The arena as a stage of power. Since the beginning of Roman civilization, the arena has always been a place of power and influence. It was there that emperors could connect directly with the people, offering entertainment while consolidating their authority. The arena, with its frenzied crowds and bloody spectacles, was a reflection of the very spirit of Rome. Brutal, yet magnificent. Understanding this symbolism, Commodus decided to use the arena in a way no emperor had before, transforming it into his primary stage of power. For Commodus, the arena wasn't just a place of entertainment. It was a battlefield where he could demonstrate his dominance, not only over the gladiators, but over the entire empire. By fighting in the arena, Commodus positioned himself in a spotlight no other emperor had ever occupied. He was at the center of the stage, literally, showing the people that he was an emperor who wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty, to fight alongside common men. However, this display of power in the arena had a dark side. While the masses marveled at the emperor's courage, Roman leaders saw in it a dangerous inclination towards tyranny. Under Commodus's command, the arena ceased to be merely a place of celebration and became a symbol of his absolute dominance. Through these battles, he showed that he was untouchable, that not even death could bring him down. To his enemies, this was a clear sign that Commodus was willing to do anything to maintain power, including subverting the very traditions of the empire. Commodus's battles also served as a form of political propaganda. Each of his victories was exalted as proof of his divinity, reinforcing the idea that he was chosen by the gods to lead Rome. The games, which were already a tool of social control, became even more centered around the figure of the emperor. The people, who once watched the fights for entertainment, now saw in them a reflection of Commodus's power. The arena, therefore, was not just a place of physical combat, but also of symbolic combat, where the emperor repeatedly asserted his supremacy. But this centralization of power around Commodus also had negative consequences. As he became more obsessed with the arena, he began to neglect other crucial areas of his government. The empire's borders were threatened, the economy began showing signs of weakness, and corruption proliferated among officials. While Commodus fought in the arena to preserve the image of Rome, the empire itself began to disintegrate from within. The arena, which for so long had been a symbol of Rome's glory and unity, began to represent the decadence and vanity of Commodus's rule. What initially seemed like an innovative strategy to revitalize the empire's image turned into a reflection of his inability to govern wisely. By focusing so much on the arena, Commodus failed to see that Rome needed more than a gladiator emperor. It needed a leader who could guide it through the looming crises. Rome's fascination with gladiatorial combat, between spectacle and politics. Gladiator fights in Rome were always more than just simple spectacles. They were a tool of social control and a manifestation of imperial power. Since the time of the Republic, the games were used as a way to keep the population distracted and satisfied, especially during times of crisis. The gladiators, with their brutal and bloody battles, symbolized the strength and invincibility of Rome. For the people, watching these combats wasn't just a form of entertainment. It was also a collective experience that reinforced the pride of belonging to the world's greatest empire. Commodus, by directly involving himself in these fights, deeply understood this fascination. He knew that the arena was not just a place where men fought to the death. It was the beating heart of Roman culture, where virtues like courage, strength, and skill were celebrated. By placing himself at the center of this spectacle, Commodus tried to connect directly with the most basic values of Roman society, presenting himself as an emperor who not only understood but also embodied these virtues. However, Rome's fascination with the fights also had a darker side. The constant need for increasingly grand and violent spectacles reflected a growing thirst for blood and the dehumanization that permeated Roman society. The public, hungry for excitement and distraction, began to demand not just fights, but executions, animal battles, and other forms of extreme violence. Commodus, by engaging in these fights, fed this demand, turning the arena into a space where the line between spectacle and brutality became increasingly blurred. Politically, the arena fights served as a pressure valve for social tensions. During the games, the people temporarily forgot about everyday problems like inflation, corruption, and border wars. By offering these spectacles, Commodus could, for a brief moment, control the masses and avoid uprisings. However, this reliance on the games as a way to appease the people also highlighted the fragility of Commodus's rule, as he preferred to offer distractions rather than face problems head-on. But the arena was also a stage of power for Commodus. By fighting, he not only placed himself in a prominent position, but also sent a clear message to his enemies. He was the warrior emperor, someone who not only ruled with authority, but could also fight and win like any other soldier. This image, however, was complex and contradictory, as while the people saw him as a hero, the Roman elite began to view him as a threat, someone who was willing to sacrifice Rome's traditions and stability for his own glory. Thus, Rome's fascination with the fights became both a boon and a trap for Commodus. By giving himself over to the spectacle, he won the love of the masses, but also distanced himself from the responsibilities of governance. The arena, once a symbol of imperial power, began to transform into a symbol of the decline of his reign, reflecting the growing distance between Commodus and the reality of Rome's needs. Revitalizing Rome's image, the mission of Commodus. Since the rise of his father, Marcus Aurelius, to the throne, Rome had been governed by leaders who prioritized philosophy, justice, and efficient administration. However, as the empire expanded and faced both internal and external crises, there was a growing need to rejuvenate Rome's image, both for its citizens and for the outside world. Commodus, recognizing this challenge, decided that the arena would be the ideal place for this revitalization. He believed that by presenting himself as a gladiator emperor, he could rekindle the warrior spirit that had made Rome the dominant power. Commodus's mission was clear: to bring back the glory days of Rome, when the empire was feared and respected by all. For him, this meant more than just conquering territories or subjugating enemies. It was about reviving the values that had forged the Roman identity. By fighting in the arena, Commodus sought to position himself as the successor to the ancient Roman heroes, almost mythical figures who had built the empire through their military and moral prowess. However, Commodus's attempt to revitalize Rome's image through the arena received mixed reactions. For the people, there was a clear fascination with an emperor willing to fight for his own glory and that of the empire. Many saw this as a return to Rome's warrior roots, a reaffirmation of the strength and vigor that had built the empire. The packed arenas and the public's acclamations reflected a desire to reconnect with this glorious past. On the other hand, the Roman elite viewed this approach with great concern. To the senators and other leaders, Commodus's fixation on the arena was a sign of imbalance, a desperate attempt to compensate for his lack of governing ability with displays of physical strength. Moreover, by focusing so much on the fights, Commodus was neglecting critical issues like the empire's administration, the economy, and the defense of its borders. What began as a mission to revitalize Rome started to look more like a dangerous obsession. Commodus's attempt to revive Rome's past glories also raised questions about what it truly meant to be a leader. While his predecessors had excelled in wisdom and prudent governance, Commodus seemed more interested in being seen as a popular hero than in addressing the real challenges facing the empire. This difference in approach highlighted a fundamental conflict in his reign: the tension between the need for effective leadership and the desire to achieve heroic immortality. In the end, Commodus's mission to revitalize Rome's image was, in many ways, a double-edged sword. While he managed to capture the people's imagination and create an aura of greatness around himself, his obsession with the arena and personal glory ultimately contributed to the empire's destabilization. The legacy of Commodus in the arena would be remembered, but the consequences of his mission would leave a lasting mark on Rome's history. Commodus and Roman mythology, the hero he wanted to be. Since the early days of the Roman Empire, mythology has played a central role in the cultural identity of the society. The Romans saw their leaders not just as political figures, but as representatives of the gods on earth, men who embodied the virtues and strength of mythological heroes. Commodus, aware of this symbolic power, sought to align his image with that of the great heroes of Roman mythology. He didn't just want to be an emperor. He wanted to be remembered as a new Hercules, a demigod who walked among mortals and whose name would echo through eternity. This fascination with Hercules wasn't superficial. Commodus consciously adopted the attributes of the mythological hero, even appearing in public wearing a lion skin and wielding a club, iconic symbols of the god. More than mere props, these elements were used by Commodus to reinforce his image as an invincible leader, capable of superhuman feats. By positioning himself as a new Hercules, Commodus was attempting to legitimize his rule and strengthen his position, not just as an emperor, but as a divine figure. However, this association with Hercules also had deeper implications. For Commodus, adopting the persona of Hercules was a way to reconnect Rome with its glorious past, reviving the times when mythological heroes shaped the city's destiny. By identifying with such an iconic hero, Commodus hoped that his reign would be seen as an era of rebirth, where ancient virtues were restored and Rome returned to being the dominant power it once was. Yet this self-identification with mythology also distanced him from reality. Commodus began to believe that, like Hercules, he was invincible and infallible. This fueled his excessive confidence, and in some cases, paranoia, as he viewed any criticism as a personal attack on his divinity. To his enemies, Commodus wasn't a hero, but a delusional tyrant who was losing touch with the real needs of the empire. This disconnect became more evident as his obsession with Hercules grew, leading many to question his sanity and ability to govern. The desire to be seen as a mythic hero also impacted the way Commodus conducted his fights in the arena. Each combat was more than just a display of strength. It was a reenactment of Hercules' feats, an opportunity for Commodus to prove to the people that he was, indeed, a demigod. These fights, often carefully choreographed, reinforced his image as a leader who could overcome any challenge, both human and divine. However, the obsession with this mythological narrative began to erode his image as a ruler, causing many to see him more as an actor playing a role than as a true emperor. In the end, Commodus's attempt to transform himself into a mythological hero reflected his deep insecurity and desire to be remembered. He desperately wanted to leave a legacy that rivaled the great heroes of the past, but in doing so, he lost sight of the realities of his governance. The image of Commodus as Hercules may have impressed the people for a time, but as the reality of his leadership unraveled, it became clear that mythology could not save Rome from the crises that were mounting. The price of glory, public perception of Commodus. As Commodus devoted himself to building his image as a mythological hero, public perception of him began to split. To the masses, he was on one hand the emperor who brought entertainment and presented himself as an invincible warrior. The arena, with its spectacular fights, served as a stage where Commodus could display his strength and courage. However, on the other hand, this relentless pursuit of personal glory also raised suspicions and criticisms, both among the people and within the Roman elite. At first, many Romans admired the fact that their emperor was directly involved in gladiatorial combat. It seemed like an act of bravery and leadership, an emperor who not only commanded from his throne, but was also willing to risk his life like any other warrior. This closeness to the people, however, began to raise doubts about Commodus's true intentions. Was he really trying to revive Rome's glory, or was it all just a selfish quest for adulation and power? The Roman elite, especially the senators, began to grow increasingly concerned about Commodus's image. To them, the emperor was drifting away from the traditions and responsibilities that came with his office. Instead of ruling with prudence and wisdom, Commodus seemed more interested in entertaining the masses and perpetuating the image of a near-divine leader. This perception started to create a rift between Commodus and those who were supposed to be his closest allies, fueling discontent and conspiracies against him. Moreover, Commodus's constant displays of power began to lose their initial impact. The people, who once cheered each victory in the arena, started to view these events with a certain apathy, realizing that the fights were often rigged to ensure the emperor's victory. The glory that Commodus so desperately sought began to wear thin, and the public started to question the authenticity of his achievements. At the same time, the elite saw these displays as a clear sign that Commodus was becoming increasingly disconnected from the realities of his empire. The price of glory for Commodus was steep. As he delved deeper into his persona as a gladiator hero, he distanced himself from the responsibilities of an emperor. Rome's economy suffered. The borders grew increasingly vulnerable, and corruption spread among government officials. To many, Commodus was more of a circus attraction than a leader capable of guiding the empire through difficult times. This negative perception only grew over time, leading to a rising discontent that would eventually culminate in his downfall. In the end, Commodus's quest for glory and personal recognition backfired. What began as an effort to revitalize Rome's image ended up weakening his position as emperor and alienating both the people and the elite. His obsession with the arena and the image of a mythical hero overshadowed his ability to govern effectively, leaving Rome vulnerable and his own legacy in ruins. The disintegration of imperial power when the spectacle fails. As the reign of Commodus progressed, the Roman Empire began to show signs of collapse, both internally and externally. The emperor's obsession with the arena and his relentless pursuit of personal glory led to a dangerous neglect of governance. The Roman economy, already weakened by years of conflict and mismanagement, began to crumble, while the empire's borders became increasingly vulnerable to invasions. The stability that Rome had maintained for centuries started to unravel, and the spectacle that once entertained the masses was no longer enough to mask the growing failures in Commodus's government. The imperial power, which once seemed invincible, began to disintegrate under the weight of mounting crises. Commodus, more concerned with his public image than with the realities of the empire, started to lose control over the structures of power that held Rome together. The Senate, which should have been a supportive force for the emperor, became increasingly hostile, seeing Commodus as a threat to the very survival of the empire. Conspiracies began to arise, and Commodus's own government started to be seen as a tragic spectacle, where power and glory were in constant decline. The arena, which had long served as a symbol of Rome's strength and unity, became a reflection of Commodus's fragility as a ruler. The public, who once applauded his victories, began to realize that the empire was crumbling around them. The fights, once seen as demonstrations of power, began to be viewed as distractions, desperate attempts by Commodus to maintain control over an empire he could no longer govern. The failure to address the real crises of the empire caused the spectacle of the arenas to lose its luster, and Commodus's glory began to turn into disdain and distrust. The weakening of Commodus's power also led to a rise in corruption and disorder within Rome. With the emperor increasingly absent from governance, government officials began to act on their own, often for their own benefit and at the expense of the empire's well-being. The loyalty that was once ensured by imperial power began to dissipate, and Rome found itself in a state of growing anarchy. Internal policies became chaotic, and the lack of strong leadership opened the door for increased social and political tensions. What remained of imperial power began to be questioned from all sides. The borders, once protected by loyal armies, started to give way under external pressures. Germanic invaders and other barbarian tribes sensed Rome's weakness and began to attack with more frequency and success. Meanwhile, within the walls of Rome, the population grew increasingly desperate, with discontent rising as hunger and insecurity spread. Commodus, the emperor who was supposed to protect and strengthen Rome, seemed powerless in the face of the chaos he had helped to create. In the end, the spectacle failed, and the empire that Commodus had tried so hard to revitalize in the arena began to disintegrate. His inability to recognize that glory could not be sustained through public displays alone, and that true power required effective leadership and governance, pushed Rome to the brink of collapse. Commodus's dream of being a hero immortalized by history became a nightmare, not just for him, but for the entire empire. What remained was a legacy of destruction, where Rome's brilliance was overshadowed by the failures of its gladiator emperor.